Me, Emin Akkan from Intl Agribusiness, and I will be moderating the chickpeas panel. And as the major grower and the major origin, I would like to start with the India, which is one of the driver of the prices in the market. I would like to start with Rajat. Rajat is from Madhya Pradesh, one of the major Kabuli exporters, and in this business for years. So Rajat, let's start with this current crop. The expectations of the crop size were smaller than the previous year, which was the record. But what happened during the harvest, and what is the size? How was the crop this year?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to give you a little historical data about 2013 chickpeas crop. We had a record harvest in 2013, the crop size going above 750,000 metric tons, which was almost 70 to 80% higher as compared to 2012. India again posted a record exports of chickpeas that year, with exporting above 425,000 metric tons out of India, whereas the normal figures of export varying from 200,000 to 250,000 tons. Carryover from the last year's crop, that is the 2013 crop, is approximately 75,000 to 100,000 tons, but most of that cargo is weevilled to the extent of 1.5%. So there are only few markets which would be really ready to accept those kind of cargoes. Indian domestic consumption also increased that year, increasing from about 180,000 tons to 250,000 tons. Now let's talk about the current crop. The acreage, as we all know, was down this year because of a lot of reasons. First of all, there were good rains. Therefore, farmers shifted to wheat. Apart from that, low prices of chickpeas were also one of the important reasons, which is why farmers shifted from chickpeas to a better paying crop, which is wheat. In case of wheat, the Indian government has a procurement program from farmers wherein they pay them higher rates as compared to the prevailing market rates. Therefore, farmers are more motivated to growing wheat. Due to the decreased sowing of chickpeas in India, the expected crop at that moment, probably I would say the time would be end of January or beginning of February, everyone expected that the crop that would be harvested this year would be approximately 450 to 500,000 tons. Then we all know what happened in Gulf food. I believe it was the second day of Gulf food when I received news from India that the climate is really going bad. There is intermittent rainfall and hailstorms at multiple places, which went on for at least 3 or 4 times in the next 10-15 days, which created a big confusion in the mind of Indian suppliers, Indian traders, Indian processors. This was happening for the first time in India. So there was a lot of confusion, and they thought that we might not be able to get any cargo or very less cargo from the fields. The quality would certainly be damaged, and there were some speculators in the market who were spreading rumors, a lot of photos, and a lot of mails circulated around the international market within the growers, showing pictures of hailstorms and big pieces of ice lying in the fields on the chickpeas, and which changed the sentiment in Indian market. A lot of Indian traders and a lot of Indian processors went out into the market, started buying heavily.
Rajat, if I interrupt here, what is the quality now? All these weather issues, okay, on one side it affected the crop size,
Yeah.
but what happened to quality? Is still reliable or there's some damage?
I believe there is a minor correction in the quality. We used to supply 4.2 percentage defects for larger caliber. This time we'll be able to supply with 4.7% defects. But if someone has to buy 3.5 or 4.2, I would say even that is possible out of India. One has to do select processing and select buying from specific regions which are not affected.
I understand. Thank you very much. If you don't mind, let's switch to alternative origin Mexico. Joy, I would like to ask to you. Last year, the Mexican prices remained firm, and this created the idea that there will be some carryover in Mexico. And you think that Mexican shippers will be less stubborn and flexible and matching the international prices this year?
Well, first of all, I want to introduce myself. I'm Joel Valenzuela from Mexico. In the brochure, there's the name of another participant from Mexico that was impossible to get here to South Africa. So I am Joel Valenzuela from the company Jova. We are growers and exporters of Mexican chickpeas. The situation in Mexico right now, we just finished the Sinaloa state crop, and now we are starting the Sonora state harvest time, which is starting last week. In Mexico, the situation is good. We have no problem on damage. The quality is excellent. The size is good. Regular size in Mexico, 42, 44. So that's a 12 mm, big size, clean, with any problem. Mexico, of course, India plays a big factor for the reference price for Mexico. But in the north of Mexico, the farmers are more willing to grow other products, like white corn is the number one. White corn, sorghum, different kinds of bean, and chickpeas. So the exporters, we are paying a very good price. We are paying a fair price to the Mexican growers, so they don't go next year and change to grow different products like corn. So the reference price today that I can mention here in public for the Kabuli Mexican chickpeas will be between $1,250 and $1,300 CNF.
But on one side, what is the crop size this year?
The crop size, I think, is less than 140,000 tons.
140.
140. The total crop size, the total Mexico, Sinaloa, Sonora, and Baja California. For the 140,000, I think for good export quality will be around 120,000. I think right now there is no carryover from last year. Everything was cheap during February and March after the news of the Indian situation with the weather. So right now there is at least 110,000 tons available, or 110 or 120,000 tons available. I don't have the numbers of my competitors if they are sold or unsold, but the product is in Mexico and it's a good quality product.
Thank you very much. If we come to Dirk is one of the most experienced guys among us for more than 35 years in the business, and he will be covering the US outlook.
So this season, the U.S. grower is anticipating to reduce his Kabuli chickpea acres for the large size. Will be down, at least what USDA is saying, that we're going to be down 12 to 13%. But they are increasing the planted acres for the small Kabuli type that's used mainly for hummus in the U.S. We've seen our consumption in the U.S., the domestic consumption, go up dramatically, so that we have been a little less dependent on exports than we previously have been. Today, right in the U.S., we've had about between 35 and I think 38,000 tons of exports this season, which is significantly behind where we were this time last year. We've seen less sailings to Turkey than we previously had. With the activity in India, values firmed up in the States and growers got bullish, but it hasn't changed their planting intentions. On the Canadian side,
Actually, this would be my question, Dirk, to you. You mentioned that among all these origins, export-oriented, but except North America. North America has got no own consumption coming from the hummus market. And that is the reason why we don't see the Canadian kabulis in international markets anymore. It's sewing, or it's all the harvest is consumed domestically.
I think that you know, the U.S. grower and the Canadian growers, they view Kabuli chickpeas as an expensive crop and a high management crop. There are certain production areas where it fits very well, and we'll continue to see those areas grow Kabuli chickpeas. But in some of that fringe areas, they're moving that production over into other pulse types. We're not losing pulses, but they'll be shifting to green pea acres, or they'll be shifting to red lentil acres, so that we kind of have a core of growers that will stay with the Kabulis. But we see the acreage in Canada coming down by maybe 45% from last year to where they'll only be around 100,000 acres. Last year we produced about 180,000 tons in Canada. This year, you know, half that would probably be anticipated.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the words to Nicolas. He's from Argentina, from Alegrow. And Argentina used to be the rising supplier of kabuli for the last 2 years. But all of a sudden, in current year, it disappeared in international markets. What happened in Argentina?
Hello, good morning to everyone. First of all, you need to understand that in Argentina, chickpeas has always been an alternative crop. During the past years, we increased a lot our production, and it was principally because of the government policies towards the wheat, which is the principal winter crop in Argentina. For this year, we will have an important decrease in the planted area, which will be of approximately 35 to 40%, with 35 to 40,000 hectares of plantings. If we assume, let's say, a yield of 1,200 kilos per hectare, we'll have around 45 to 50,000 tons of exports, which means a decreasing from 2012 and 2013, where in 2012 we export 85,000 metric tons, and in 2013 65,000 metric tons. This is principally, for this year, the important reduction is principally due to the lack of seed. We don't have good quality seed for this year, and the wheat prices in Argentina goes up at around 50%, and besides that, farmers don't find good agronomical results during the past years.
Thank you. So if you continue our tour, I would like to ask Prakash the situation in Australia. Australia is one of the kabuli origins losing steam in international markets. How you evaluate the current crop and the future prospects in Australia?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Prakash from Fertin, West Australia. Australia basically has a very small kabuli crop. We basically have 3 varieties. KCP Genesis 090, 079, and 114. The most popular exportable product is Genesis 090, which is the 7.8 mm caliber. We basically had an average production of about 79,000 tons over last 4 years, with a larger production during 2013. Our production last year was about 95,000 tons. And at the moment, we have very large stocks. We expect the current year production to be around 50 to 60,000 tons with lower grower interest. And our major destinations have been India, Pakistan being a major buyer for us. So,
Thank you very much. Actually, this question, now there is another phenomenon that the Russian kabulis are in the market, especially in small size, and this is bringing big competition in terms of price. I think, my opinion this year, just a brief outlook, Russia is expected to have, if all goes well, between 400 to 500,000 tons. So when we talk about all these origins, Argentina, it's more than if we sum up Argentina, Australia, and US even. So these kabulis, small size kabulis, will end up in, I think, in Pakistan, and it will bring competition for Australia and Argentina, and in Europe as well. In Europe, hummus market. Maybe US, North America can be far-fetched, but all the kabuli growers should be aware that the cheap Russian kabuli will take market share, especially in small size segments. If we close up the origins here, Navneet, I would like to give the word to you. Now, okay, we are talking about less acreage, we are talking about damage, but we don't see strong demand in kabulis for the last 3 months, and not big movement. What can be the reasons if you cover the destinations like Turkey and Algeria?
Hello, my name is Navneet, and I'm from Indore, India, and exactly I'm here covering the demands in Algeria and Turkey destinations. Mr. Amin, what exactly the situation is, last year we see there is a historic production in chickpeas, whether we are talking about India and Mexico. In the meantime, India exports per year around 160, 170, and last year India exported more than 340, 350,000 metric ton. So right now, as of we talk about today, the destinations are full. Like Turkey still have 2013 crop from India and Mexico, more than, you can say, 15,000 metric ton. And Algeria also have more than 20,000 metric ton of the 2013 crop from India and Mexico total. Also, when we are talking about the demand scenario, we have to consider Iraq also. Iraq is a big market for Turkey, for the export from Turkey. Iraq still have 10 to 15,000 metric ton from the last year 2013 crops. Also, I want to add in the Mexico and India race, this year Mexico wins the game. Mexico sold more than 2,000 containers in the first 3 or 4 months, and every month there are the shipments. So that's why there is no any demands from India. Like in the last Feb and March, India export more than 2,200 of the containers of chickpeas to Algeria and Mexico, Algeria and Mersin. But in the current year, Feb and March, India only export 400 containers or 500 containers, the maximum size, because all demands, because of this Gulf food, the weather scenario in India, all demands go to Mexico, and people want to buy Mexico at the gap of $100 from India. So, like last year, Algeria import historic, like 108,000 metric ton on its general average of 60,000 metric ton every year. Algeria imports 60,000 every year we see it from the last 2010 to 2013. But last year, Algeria imported 108,000 metric ton, out of which 76,000 is from India, and 20,000 metric ton is from Mexico. That's 10 or 12,000 from the other parts of the world. Same like Turkey imports last year more than 60, 70,000 metric ton, out of which 50,000 metric ton is from India and 15,000 metric ton from Mexico and other destinations also. So the demand, the main thing is that the demand is not increased in the same proportion like the imports increase at the destinations. And still, that's why there is still still the crops are there at the destinations, and Mexico wins the race, and they sold the more than 2,000 containers up to the June shipment. So I think the next demand should become after Ramadan. Before Ramadan, I did not see aggressive demands from Indian market, as well as Mexico.
So when we listened to previous panels as well, and in other pulses too, unless there's a logistic issue at the origin, all the destinations are overbooked. Now we see it in Kabulis as well. The major destinations like Turkey and Algeria, they are well covered and overbooked. So I would like to come to Rajat. Okay, what if the demand does not come? What is the plan B for Indian exporters?
Hello. Yeah, I would say we are only worried about the large calibers, which are approximately 50% of the raw material that we're getting from farmers. The major importing destinations are Algeria and Turkey. Some quantities goes to Middle East and Sri Lanka, and some of the amounts to Europe. Algeria and Turkey has been quiet for a long time, but other destinations are still buying in small quantities. And I believe they'll continue to buy smaller quantities because Middle East, which is having Ramadans by the end of June, would continue to buy and keep us busy. Maybe in small quantities, but still. Apart from, as far as the small size is concerned, Pakistan is a continuous buyer in 9 millimeters. And I would like to bring the attention that Pakistan is the biggest buyer of Indian Kabuli chickpeas. Last year, India exported 120,000 metric tons of 9 millimeters and other calibers to Pakistan. So the only problem which we might face is in larger calibers, but that too, probably after a couple of months, I believe that the demands from both these destinations, Algeria and Turkey, would start to pour in.
Logistics was the hottest topic of this year's CICILs. And I would like to ask to Joy in Mazatlan. After this price hike in India, there will be a sudden demand, a rush to Mexican chickpeas, especially to wipe out the old crop. Is there any logistics issues in Mazatlan, the shortage of container? Because this happened 2 to 3 years ago. So this year, you are going to have any logistics issues, lack of containers or late shipments in Mexico?
I don't know. I don't see any problem in the future of Mazatlan. Actually, the port of Mazatlan is the Mexican government is increasing the capacity for the vessels to arrive, bigger vessels to arrive. So in Mexico, I don't see problems with the containers. We are receiving vessels once a week. We only have 2 lines, MSSA and Hapag-Lloyd. Those are the only 2 container shipping lines that arrive to the port. But no, I don't see any problem with the logistics.
Thank you. As tradition, I would like to take the expectation of the panelists for the next future price expectations. But the panel in Goa, which was in February, proved how wrong to make expectations. I remember my expectations something between 850 to 950, but then next week we were in Gulf Food and the prices was $200 up. So, but no matter, to make the tradition happen, I want to hear the price expectations of everybody here, and let's start here with the Rajat and continue with the Mexico.
As far as the prices are concerned, I would like to bring to the attention that their estimates were once upon a time during Gulf Food were revised by Indians that they won't be getting more than 200 to 225,000 tons of chickpeas. But the future still is confusing. Nobody actually knows how much damage it has occurred. But I still believe that we will be able to fetch around 400,000, 425,000 out of India. The prices were as high as 1250 FOB levels in sometime in March, and came down by the end of April to 970 FOB levels. Today, I would say we would be around 990 FOB levels for 42, 44. The key here is that the Indian prices locally are still has come down to pre-Gulf Food levels. Those are the levels when we started our season. Those were the prices which were at the beginning of the crop year. And in tandem with the last year's prices, I believe these prices are very good prices. And if there is further drop in prices from these levels, Indian farmers would be reluctant to sell and bring product into the market. Therefore, if the prices go down, the arrivals will decrease, certainly. So I believe that the prices are going to remain in the same region. Also, one thing important is our currency, which has appreciated over 5% in the last 2 months, which is why the export costing is looking costlier to all the buying destinations. Otherwise, locally, the prices have come down to pre-Gulf Food levels.
So you put your expectation between 950 FOB and
950 and 1,050 FOB.
And what about Joe? What do you expect for the Mexican prices in the near future?
I expect, I think the prices are not going to go lower than the actual price, because we are in the middle of the Sonora harvest now. So today's reference price is between $1,250 and $1,300 CNF. The prices from Mexico, we are in Mexico, the marketing in Mexico is different than India. So you have 5 main exporters that buy the chickpeas during the crop, and then we have 1 year to sell. So we don't depend on the daily arrivals like India. And the prices after, like Navneet said, after summer, after Ramadan, I see the prices going up, depending on also on the quality of the Indian chickpeas. But for us, from my point of view, we are not competing, even we are all representing chickpeas, but we are not competing with Australia, we're not competing with Russia, so that's different.
That's true. So 1250, 1300 CNF are the comfortable levels that you see
during
the next 2 months, I think.
Okay.
In summer.
One question. One question that in India, we have the procurement procedure in India and Mexico is entirely different. In Mexico, I believe 70% of the crop which comes from Sinaloa comes in very fast and is already procured and probably stocked into the warehouses of processors and traders from Mexico. Whereas in India, only 25% or 35% of crop has yet been brought into the market by farmers. So we still have an advantage over going down in terms of prices, but probably you, since you've already bought a majority of your purchases from the market, how flexible you are to decreasing prices from Mexico?
We are not flexible. We cannot reduce selling prices because we already pay for that. So even if India keep lowering their prices, if prices in India keep going down, we cannot follow Indian prices. So that's sometimes hard for the buyers, for the customers to understand when they compare Mexico with India. They say it's very similar quality, very similar product, but we also have a freight difference. We pay much higher prices because we are far. Mexico to Middle East, Mexico to North Africa, the freight is different than from India origin.
Thank you. Navneet, what do you think? Especially the Indian prices.
What I understand from this, the prices right now is not a matter for concern. The main matter is of the demands. If the demands is there, these prices, whatever India is trading, whatever Mexico is trading, is acceptable at the destinations. But because I know that Mexico already contracted their 50,000 metric ton of crop, which is almost 60% of, or 50, 60. And I think Mexico I think they did not go lower from these prices. And the next demand should be come from India. And if the demands come India, $950 or $1,000 is accepted by all destinations.
Okay, so everybody is putting the price floors. So for Mexico is putting the price floor as 1250, 13 CNF, and India is 950, 1000. What about Argentina, Nicolas? For the new crop, it's too early to comment, but for 9mm and 8mm, what do you think, where the levels will be?
Well, Argentina, it's a really follower of the market. We don't make a price in the market, which our 80% of our production is of small counts. We have 7 and 8 millimeters principally, and we have a lot of competitors in those calibers. So for small counts, I don't see the market going up or going down. I think the market will be at its present prices for the next few months in the shorter term. And after Ramadan, I agree with Navneet. The prices may go up, but not much more. Prices, they are at a good level.
Thank you very much. Dirk, a lot of players wants to hear your expectations for US 5860.
Currently, the existing stocks are being pulled down. There's values have been trading in a range of I'd say 1,000 to 1,100 on a SIF basis. We've seen a small amount of new crop business done at approximately 1,100 into the med, some just under that. Crops in the ground right now. Growers' expectations are will be somewhat driven by how we do this summer. But the other thing I do see is I see some pressure on the eights. We have a carryover of eights. The U.S. grower is used to seeing some pretty good numbers on that size because some of our canning customers have switched to that. But and we've also seen the value of small caliber chickpeas in the domestic market propping it up. But between Canada and the U.S., there's a carryover, a fairly significant carryover, eights, and I think those will come off sharply.
Thank you. Prakash, where do you put the Australian values for the new crop? What are your expectations? Cost and freight Karachi.
You see the prices at which the 7-8mm caliber were trading around February were in the range of 510 to 525 on SIF levels into Karachi. With the news of the crop damage in India, the prices shot up by more than $100. So we saw the highs of about $640 at destination. And now at the moment, we again have demand coming up from Pakistan. And the demand is at around 600 levels. So it all depends on how basically the situation comes up out there at the destination. But I think the price would remain stable between $590 to $625.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I thank all our friends, and I would like to receive some questions, if any, now. I know you are tired after three days show. Any questions? Everybody wants to go home. Nobody wants to hear Kabbali's.
I would like to ask you, Navneet, about the quality issues of new crop in India.
Mr. Sahabuddin, yes, there is some quality issues, like when you compare the old crop and new crop, there is some water damages in the crop because of the rains at the time of harvesting. There is, and you can find when you compare it is little bit less whitish than last year crop. So only this is the quality issue. Other defects should be easily handpicked by by our facilities. But I agree, there is some issues in the quality from the last year. Because of the color especially.
Okay, thank you, Navneet.
Myself, Sohail Ashrafi from Park Grain Enterprises, Pakistan. And my question is to Mr. Priyesh. How about Myanmar and Ethiopian Kabli? Can they affect Australian Kabli demand?
I think that I don't think so. I think that the Australian farmers are holding the prices. They are having the appetite to store. They would sell at a particular number beyond which they would not go down. As mentioned that the current year acreage is expected to go down due to lack of interest and the carryover stocks. So therefore we don't think that with the demand coming up, the prices would go down.
Yes.
Good morning. Albert Garcia, as you all know me. This is a question for any of both Indians. Do you think the Indian population will consume all the available crop, and can they afford such prices?
Albert, Indian consumption domestically consists of mostly 6, 7, 8, and 9 millimeters. Very few, very small quantities of larger calibers like 10 and 11 and 12 millimeters. And as I mentioned earlier, that Indian consumption last year was 250,000 tons, which was because of the lowest ever prices experienced in the last 3 years. This year, we're going to see a little lesser consumption, probably around 180 to 200,000 tons going domestically, but that would be mostly small caliber.
Thank you.
Also, I want to add, Mr. Albert, on this. We have sufficient stock in India for bigger counts, but whatever this year the projection numbers, we are almost on the break-even point for the smaller counts, because whatever carryover we have from the last year crop of 60, 70,000 metric ton, 80% is the bigger count, and this year projection we are expecting around 350,000 metric ton, out of which 170 is the bigger count. So we are looking for the demands in the bigger count, which again it should become after Ramadan. Before Ramadan it's sooner. So we need India to export around 150,000 metric ton to make the high level of the chickpeas prices up to 1200 or 13. But if this exportable quantity not gone this year from India out, again we are seeing $850 or $900. It is not over.
Thank you.
As far as I see, no more questions. Thank you very much for listening us, and wish you all safe flight back to your home. Thank you.